I'm Anil Kumar. Welcome to my series on fractions. This is one of the most difficult concepts which we learn in elementary classes, and it is least understood. I have actually taken up 10 questions here. We'll see how to really work with fractions. Here is question number 1, where we'll talk about arranging them in a particular order from greatest to least. All these fractions are with kind of different denominators. The second one here is which fractions are less than half. So we'll find a very easy way to figure it out. And then we have a word problem. Anil has read 3/4 of his novel. Ben has read 5/7 of the same novel. Who has read more? So that is also comparing fractions. Another word problem. Sam and Rita are collecting shells on the beach in identical pails. Sam estimates that he has filled 5/8 of his pail. Rita estimates that she has filled 4/10 of her pail. Suppose they combine their shells. Will one pail be full? Explain. So these word problems add to our problems. So let's see how to add fractions. 3 examples, all are different kinds. We are also talking about here mixed numbers. So the question C is adding mixed numbers, right? And we have all these fractions to be added with different denominators. And then we'll talk about subtracting fractions of similar kind with same level of complexity. We'll also learn how to take out the common denominator and work efficiently. Then we'll multiply the fractions, which probably is simplest of all these operations. But when it comes to word problems, it becomes really tricky. So question number 8 is, Kate ran 7/10 of 15-kilometer marathon. Sophia ran 5/6 of the same 15-kilometer marathon. Who ran farther and by how many kilometers? That is indeed difficult to answer. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Kunal says that 2/3 of his stamps collection is Asian stamps. 1/5 of the Asian stamp collection are from India. What fraction of the total collection is from India? We'll figure that out also, right? And here is the last question to conclude, where we just added and subtracted few fractions. So again, we'll kind of review what we have learned over, and then I hope by this time you will be an expert in working with fractions. So let's begin with question number 1. Thank you. So let's begin with the very first question. We need to order from greatest to least. 5/6, 2/3, 1/2, 5/8, 1/4, and 3/4. What should be our first step? First step is to have the lowest common denominator. So we'll call this as lowest common denominator, right? Now there are many methods of finding it. However, I will actually suggest that you follow this particular method, which we were taught long time back. Now this is called as ladder division. This method is not taught these days, but it is probably one of the best ways of finding the lowest common denominator. Now, reasons why we don't really understand this topic is because it is not being taught in the right way. So I hope by the end of this video, you'll get very easy concepts to learn. So what do? We have to find the lowest common denominator. Now the numbers written here are the denominators. So let's copy one of each kind. So we have 6, we have 3, we have 2, we have 8, and we also have a 4. So we need to find the number which is lowest common denominator. So how can we get that? Well, there are some common factors. For example, 6 and 3. 3 is common. So the idea here is to get rid of common factors. That's the first thing. How do we do that? So we kind of divide by something which can divide at least 2 numbers. So 3 can divide at least two numbers. So let's begin with 3. 3 goes 2 times in 6 and 1 time in 3. The other numbers cannot be divided by 3, so we just write them as such. Is that clear? Now, good number to divide by is 2. So let's divide by 2. We can divide 2. 1 cannot be divided. We'll write it as such. 2 can be divided. 8 can be divided by 2. It goes 4 times. And 4 can be divided, goes 2 times. Still, we have a common factor between 4 and 2. So to get the lowest common factor, we have to get rid of that common factor. So we'll again divide by 2. 1s cannot be divided. These are the least numbers. 4 can be divided by 2. We get 2. 2 times 1 is 2. So finally, we get list of numbers which could give us lowest common denominator. So from here, we get the lowest common denominator as product of these numbers. So which is 3 times, 2 times, 2 times 2. Multiplying by 1 doesn't really change anything. So we have these 4 numbers to multiply with. So 3 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that gives you what? So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24. So we get 24 as our lowest common denominator. So this is our first step, correct? Next step is what? So next step is to get the equivalent fractions. So next step is to write equivalent fractions. So let's write down the next step, which I will say as equivalent fractions. Now what do I mean? I mean to say that I have to write all of them with a denominator of 24, right? So we have to convert all these fractions with lowest common denominator of 24. That is the idea, right? So how do you do that? Well, as far as 6 is concerned, I have to multiply both of them by what? Well, 6 times 4, right? So we have to multiply this set of numbers by 4. So if I do that, what do I get? You have to multiply both numerator and denominator, right? So equivalent fractions means you need to multiply times both numerator and denominator, right? Is that clear, right? Then only you get equivalent fractions. So if I times by 4 both of these numbers, what do I get? 4 times 5 is 20 and 4 times 6 is 24, correct? So you see that I have got 20 by 24, which is equivalent to 5 by 6. So what I did here was multiplied both of them by 4. 5 by 4 and 6 by 4. Multiplying both of them by 4 gives us 20 over 24. Is that clear to you? Perfect. Next number here. What should I multiply 3 by? 3 should be multiplied by 8, and so 2 should also be multiplied by 8, right? So when I do that, I get 8 times 2 as 16 and 3 times 8 as 24. Is that clear? Next number here, 2 should be multiplied by what? So 2 should be multiplied by 12. So 12 times 2 is 24. So we again get the same common denominator 24, but the numerator changes to 12. Is that clear? 8. 8 should be multiplied by 3, right? So 8 should be multiplied by 3. So we get 15. 5 times 3 and 24 is the common denominator. As far as the last two numbers are concerned, we should multiply them by 6. 6 times 4 is 24. So we get 24 in the denominator, and 6 times 1 is 6. For the next one, 6 times 3 is 18, and we get 24. Is that clear? So what you notice here is that we have now achieved the lowest common denominator of 24. Do you see that? It is 24, same base. Now you can compare fractions, right? So it is important to note that fractions can be compared only if they have same denominator. Is that clear? Now, as I was explaining, I hope you have understood the whole process. Now, these steps which we are doing, multiplying by 6, meant was you have to multiply numerator also by 6 and denominator also by 6. And what it results into is, in this case, 18 by 24. Is that clear to you? So all these numbers were being multiplied to the numerator and the denominator to get equivalent fractions. Is that clear? Now you can easily compare, right? Every one of them has 24 as their denominator. Which is the greatest? Decide and write. Perfect. So if you compare these numbers, we know this is the greatest, 20 over 24, which corresponds to 5 over 6. So we'll write 5 over 6 first. And then after 20, we can say 18 is the greatest, that is 3 over 4. Is that clear? You have to write these numbers in your answer. Then after 18, it is the number 16, the second number in our list. So we get 2 over 3. And then it is 15, which is which one? 15 over 24 is when we did 5 over 8, right? So we get 5 over 8. And after 15, by comparing, we get 12, which is the third number from the list. 12 over 24 is half. And then the lowest in this series is 1/4, which is 6 over 24. So that is how we arrange from greatest to least. Perfect. And this kind of an order is also called descending order. Is that clear? So I'd like you to go through this part of the video, very important. We have talked about a concept of how to find lowest common denominator, how to write equivalent fractions with the same common denominator, and then to compare. Now this is the most important question in the whole list. If you understand this question, then probably you can do half of those questions from this concept itself. I hope that helps. Let's move on and now take question number 2. Question number 2. Which fractions are less than half? So we got a lot of fractions here. We need to decide which one of these is less than half. Well, let's understand what is half, right? So half is kind of like this, right? So basically, if we have a circle, for example, and then we divide it into 2 equal parts, then half really means that it is this part, right? One of them. Both are equal, so that is what we mean by half. Now half can be written in many ways, and that is to say, we can look into its equivalent fractions, right? So what could be the equivalent fractions? For example, 2 over 4 is also half, right? So 3 over 6 is also half, 4 over 8 is also half. These are all halves. So what you notice here is that the denominator is twice the numerator, right? So that is 2 times, correct? 4 times 2 is 8, 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4, right? Now if I have a number less than half, so this side is less than half. And let us say this side is greater than half. How do we decide now? So simple thing is, if I am looking for the numbers, so we'll just see, is the numerator half of this or less or more? That is what. So 6 and 3, it is exactly half, so it comes right here in the center. It is not on either side. You get the idea. Perfect. Now 2 out of 3. Now what is half of 3? Or you can say, what is 2 times 2? Well, half of 3 is 1.5 and 2 times 2 is 4, right? So you could compare like this. What is half of 3? So the question is, you have to answer this question. What is half of denominator? Right, so half of 3 is 1.5, 1.5, but 2 is greater. 2 is a bigger number. Since 2 is greater, we'll write this on this side, 2 over 3. Does it make sense to you? Right, let's look into the next one. 7. What is half of 7? Well, 3.5 is half of 7, but 3 is less. So I'll write 3 over 7 on this side. Make sense? Right? Let's take another one. So this time it is 2 over 5. What is half of 5? 2.5. Is 2 greater than 2.5? No. So it comes here. So it is 2 over 5. Now I hope it is clear, right? Okay, let's take another one. We're not talking about 4, right? So what is half of 4? Half of 4 is 2. But 3 is greater, so 3 will come here. We get 3 over 4 on the greater side. Clear? One more to go. 7 over 12. What is half of 12? 6, but 7 is greater, so 7 will come here on the greater side. Is that clear? So the last one, I think you can do yourself. What is half of 11? Well, half of 11 is 5.5, right? So I've taken decimal numbers here. Now compare. 5 is less than 5.5, so it comes here. So we get 5 over 11 as less than half. So you can clearly see that these three numbers are less than half. 3 by 6 is exactly half, and the other three are greater than half. Mainly because the numerator is more than half for greater numbers. Numerator is equal to just exact half of the denominator, and numerator is less than half of denominator. Does make sense? Now as an exercise, I like you to write 2 more numbers here, right? So write 2 more numbers here, 2 more numbers here, and place 2 numbers here also. Correct? For example, one of them could be, I could write here 10 over 20. That is exactly half, right? But if I write 11 over 20, it comes here, and 9 over 20 will come on the other side. Does it make sense to you? That is what we understand when we say which fraction is less than half. I hope it makes sense. Perfect. Let's move on and look into the next question now. Now here is a word problem. Word problem combined with fractions is sometimes most difficult thing to do in our junior school. Question number 3 here is, Anil has read 3/4 of his novel. Ben has read 5/7 of the same novel. So we can compare fractions when we are talking about the same thing, right? If this was different novels, then it has no meaning. Who has read more? So let's see. So we have 2 persons being compared, reading a novel. They are reading the same novel, right? So Anil and Ben. How much has Anil read? 3 over 4. So we'll write the fractions here, which is 3 over 4, right? Big and bold. And here 5 over 7. Now how do we compare which is greater and which is less? So there are different ways to do it, right? So let's talk about different ways. So one is to find the lowest common denominator. We can find any, right? Not lowest. Common denominator will be enough. So first thing is find common denominator, then compare numerators. So we have to have the same denominator to compare. So that is one way to do it. And the second method, which I really love, is cross multiplication. So cross multiplication is best when we have 2 fractions. Okay, when we have 2 fractions, like in the given situation, cross multiplication is the best. Okay, now let us do both the methods one by one. So first, let me show you common denominator method in greening. 4 and 7. What is the lowest common denominator? Well, it is 28. When you multiply 4 and 7, that is what you get. How do I get 28 here? I'll multiply both of them by 7. So what I get here is 21 over 28. Is that clear? Here, how do I get 28? I have to multiply both of them by 4. So what I get here is 20 over 28, right? So we actually found the lowest common denominator and then we wrote equivalent fraction. Now we know which is greater. 21 is greater than 20, so we write this symbol. So this means greater. Correct? So that is first method. Perfect. Not difficult at all. Now see how cross multiplication works. So now we'll talk about cross multiplication. You must have noticed that we actually multiplied by 7, which is the number here. So don't think much, just cross multiply. So this is cross multiplication. Okay, so 7 times 3 is 21, correct? So just multiply and multiply 4 by 5. What do you get? 20. So you know what is greater. 21 is greater than 20. Nothing to do. Cross multiply. It makes sense because what you really did was you actually made the denominators common. You multiply 7 by 4 to get 28, which is a common denominator. And you see, in common denominator method also, the numerator was actually multiplied by the denominator of the other number. Do you see that? So cross multiplication always works and is so fast. So just cross multiply and get your answer. Is that clear to you? Perfect. So that is how you should be comparing. We'll have another example based on this, but just to give you a heads up, let's say I give you another number to compare. I hope you're liking this, right? So compare this. What is 5 over, let's take this denominator as 8, right? And then we'll take something with 7, right? So 7 over, let's say we have 4. If you have to compare this, what will you do? You'll cross multiply. This is 35 and that is 32. You know 35 is greater. So you could write down your answer for this particular question. So simple. Perfect. Now, here is a word problem for us. Question number 4. Sam and Rita are collecting shells on the beach in identical pails. Sam estimates that he has filled 5 over 8 of his pail. Rita estimates that she has filled 4 over 10 of her pail. Suppose they combine their shells. Will one pail be full? That is your question. How are you going to do it? So basically what we are saying is that, let's say this is their pail. Both of them have exactly same pail, right? So let us say, right? Now one of them has filled it to 5 over 8. So 5 over 8 is slightly more than half, right? So let us say this is 5 over 8. The other one has filled it to 4 over 10, which is slightly less than half. 5 over 10 is half, right? This is 4 over 10. Now you have to confirm whether when we mix them up, right? So let's say we put them into the third one, which is of the same size, right? So if we put this, we get something like this, right? And then we put this, then will it top up or not? That is what we have to look for. Perfect. So you can actually pause the video, answer this question, and then look into my suggestions. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to add two fractions which are 5 over 8 and 4 over 10. So we need to get the lowest common denominator. To do so, what you could also do is cross multiply. So I'll suggest you could actually cross multiply also. So when you cross multiply, 5 times 10 is 50, right? Plus 8 times 4 is 32, right? Here when you multiply, you get 8 times 10 is 80. And now when I add the numerators, I get 82. And the denominator here is 80, which is greater than 1. So definitely it is going to overflow, right? So this will kind of cover it up. So it is going to definitely flow, right? Suppose they contribute their shells, will one pail be full? The answer is yes, because we get 82 over 80. So will there be slightly more to just fill it up? Do you get the idea, right? So we have a fill here, right? So total fill, and it looks smaller for green, but it is right. So that is how the shells will just fill it up. So I hope the concept is clear to you. So we use cross multiply to add. We could have done it with lowest common denominator also, right? So we could have, so the other way to do it, I'll say alternate method. Will be to find lowest common denominator, which we'll take up in next example. Is that okay? Which we'll take up soon. But I hope that makes sense. Now it is good time to take a break talking about shells. Let's take a walk along the river at least, and then see what's going on there. And then we'll get back to our solutions. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the break. We are almost at the middle. Now question number 5 is find each sum. So we have to add these fractions. To add, we'll follow some steps. Step number 1 will be find lowest common denominator. Step number 2, write equivalent fractions. Step number 3, add numerators. Step number 4, simplify. Right, so these are the steps involved to add fractions. Is that clear to you? Now, we have learned how to find lowest common denominator between 5 and 4. Nothing is common, so we'll write our common denominator as 20, right? So just multiply them. So when there is nothing common, just multiply, and then we'll have to add. Perfect. So cross multiply to get your denominator if there are no common factors. Is that clear? Now, how do I get 20? I can multiply this by 4, right? So this is 4 times. So 4 times 3 is 12. For the other number to get 20, what should I do? I have to multiply this by 5, right? 5 times 1 is 5. So we get denominator of 20 for both. Once we get that, in that case, we could just add them up. When you add, denominator always remains same, which is 20 will remain as 20. 12 plus 5 is 17. So we get our answer. Is that clear? Perfect. Second one. Again, what is the lowest common denominator in 6 and 3? Well, the lowest common denominator is 6, right? 6 is common, multiple for 3. You could also find it by our ladder division method. So, we have two numbers in the denominator. Both can be divided by 3. 3 goes 2 times and 1 times with 3. So, 3 times 2 is 6. So, what we see here is that the lowest common denominator is 3 times 2, which is 6. So, we have to write as an equivalent fraction with denominator of 6. Now here 5 is already with denominator of 6. To make this 6, I have to times it by 2. So we have to add 4 over 6. Correct? So we have to multiply these by 2 over 2. When you actually multiply and divide by the same number, it is as good as multiplying by 1. That really doesn't change the fraction. Therefore, it is called equivalent fraction. Is that clear? Now when you add, you have to just add with the same denominator why are we not adding the denominators? Well, I have a video for that also. I'll provide you a link for that to understand. But never add denominators, okay? In the numerator, now this time we got 4 plus 5, which is how much? 9. Well, that could be simplified. Both have 3 common, so you understand. So sometimes we may have to simplify, and this is kind of important step. You also notice that this is more than 1. So it could be written as a mixed number also. So both can be divided by 3. So when you divide by 3, you get 3 over 2. Do you see that? Now, 3 over 2 can be written as what? If you divide 3 by 2, you get 1 whole, 1 is the remainder, and 2 this time. It could be written as a mixed number. Well, for some of you, that may be a new thing. So let's try to see how to do it. So basically, we have to divide a number which is 3 for us by 2, right? So we are dividing 3 by 2. 2 times 1 is 2, and the remainder is 1. So this particular one here comes as a whole, and that is the remainder 1 over 2. You get it? 1.5, 1.5. Okay, so that is our answer, and that is how you should be writing your answers. So I hope this point is absolutely clear, right? Now this is kind of important since now we are moving into mixed numbers. Now mixed numbers, how do I write them as fractions? Well, they could be written as improper fractions. Okay, so let us see how to write this as an improper fraction. So we always have the same denominator, which will remain as 6. In the numerator, I have to multiply 1 by 6, so I have to 1 points and then add 5. Similarly, for the next one, denominator will be 3. I'll multiply 2 by 3 and then add 1. 1 times 6 is 6, 6 plus 5 is 11, so we get 11 over 6. And here, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 plus 1 is 7, we get 7 over 3. Is that clear? Now here again, what is the common denominator? Common denominator is 6. So we know here that lowest common denominator here is 6. So what can we do? Well, let's write them both with the common denominator of 6. Now this time I have used a common denominator line. We could actually, since we see the denominators are the same and they add up to the same thing, we could also write it like this. Does it make sense to you? Perfect. Okay. Now, equivalent fractions. 6 denominator, numerator remains as 11. Here, 3 denominator. You need to multiply this by 2, right? So you have to multiply both of them by 2. So what do you get? You get 14 here. Do you see that? To make 3 times 2, 6, numerator 7 will be multiplied by 2. And now, when you multiply by 2 and then add, you still have denominator of 6. 4 plus 1 is 5 and 2 for tens place. So we get 25 over 6. Now, it is again improper fraction. I should write this as a mixed number. So what I'll do? I'll now divide 25 by 6. 6 goes 4 times in 25. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 remainder. So now I'm going to write this as 4 wholes, 1 remainder over 6. So that becomes my answer. So the answer here is 4, 1 over 6. Is that clear to you? Correct? Now, some of you could do something like this, which is, these are whole numbers, right? 1 and 2. So you could say, well, 1 plus 2 is 3. So we got 3 wholes already. And now, what we should add this to? 5 over 6 and 1 over 3. So we'll do 5 over 6 plus 1 over 3. Correct? So when you do this addition, common denominator is 6. Here you get 5 plus, here you get 2, 7. And so you say, well, we have got 3 plus 7 over 6, which is 3 plus 1, 1 over 6, or 4, 1 over 6. Now that is an alternate method. You could do that also, right? But I'll suggest why to mix them up. Just do improper fractions, add them as I've shown here, and then write your answer as a mixed number. But this is a very popular method in most of the schools. You could adopt it. It can create confusion for future. Okay, let's move on and take question number 6 now. Now let us try to understand how to subtract fractions. The steps are exactly similar to what we learned earlier. So we'll follow the same steps. First step is to find the lowest common denominator, and second is equivalent fractions. Third step is to add numerators. And the fourth step is to simplify and write down the answer, right? So when we are talking about 1 over 2 minus 1 over 4, what is the lowest common denominator? Well, the lowest common denominator here is 4, right? So 4 is common to both of them. So we identify that the lowest common denominator here is, let me write down, lowest common denominator equals to 4. How do I get it? Well, you can see the multiples of 2 also, both are 4. You could do your ladder division. That is very, very simple. And think like this. So we have two numbers here again, which are 2 and 4. Both can be divided by 2. You get 1 here and 2 here. Then 2 times 2 is 4, right? So we have the common denominator of 4, and we have to take away now from equivalent fractions. How do I make 4? I have to multiply both of them by 2. So we get 2 over 4, and this is 1 over 4. And now 2 minus 1 is 1. So we get 1 over 4 as our answer. Is that clear? Now 4 and 3. 3 is a prime number. So basically, since 3 is a prime number, we know that the common denominator is multiple of both of them, which is 12. Is that okay? Now when it comes to mixed numbers, there are different approaches. However, for me, the first step here will be, if there are mixed numbers, then we have an added step. And that step is convert mixed numbers to improper fraction. Correct? So that is an additional step which I'll add here. So whenever you're working with mixed numbers, you have to convert them to improper fractions. So let's look into it once again. How to do so? 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. So straight away I'm writing 9 over 4 here. Here it is fine, 2 over 3. Now the common denominator is 12. So I could also write with a straight line 12 common to both of them. Does it make sense to you? I just multiplied them. How do I get 12 now? So we'll just cross multiply to get our result. So to get 12 here, I have to multiply both of them by 3. 3 times 9 is 27, minus 4 times 2 is 8. So what do you notice here? Cross multiplication. So first step is this, second is cross multiplication. So that is also a key to answer such questions. Perfect. So when you cross multiply, you actually make them equivalent fractions with common denominator of 12, right? Now, 27 minus 8 is 9. So we could write this as, let me change the ink now, it will get mixed up with what I have already written. Okay, so what we get here is 9 over 12. Now we should simplify, correct? Both can be divided by 3. So we get 3 over 4, correct? So that becomes the difference, and that is our final answer, 3 over 4. Is that clear? Now let's take the next one. I'd like you to pause the video, answer this yourself, and then look into my suggestions, correct? So first step again is to make improper fraction. 3 times 6 is 18. So we'll write 18 plus 5 in the numerator with 6 as the denominator. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. I'll write 6 plus 2 at this stage since these are bigger numbers, right? Okay. So 8 plus 5 is 13, and then 1 carry. So we get 23 over 6. And here we get 8 over 3. Slightly bigger numbers. Now what is the common denominator? 3 goes 2 times, and 6 is common. 6 is a multiple of 3. So we could straight away take 6 as our common denominator. Since 6 is the common denominator, we retain 23. Here, To make 6, I have to multiply both by 2, right? So I have to multiply both by 2 to get 6 here. So we get 8 times 2 as 16. So we get 23 minus 16 as our numerator. Now, we'll have the same denominator of 6 and we'll take away 16 from 23. So when you borrow, it becomes 13 and taking away gives you number 7. Now 7 over 6 is an improper fraction which could be written as 1 whole. So when you divide one time, remainder is 1 over 6. So if you want to do, you can always do it on the side, right? So we could do it on the side, dividing 7 by 6, one time 6, one time remainder. So this one here is the whole, correct? So that is how you are going to subtract fractions. Is that clear? Have a good look at it. This is very critical and important to understand. Now let's take a break, and after the break we'll see how to multiply fractions. So I hope you're fresh now. It's been rather a long video. Now let us see how to multiply fractions. While multiplication of fractions is simpler, we do not have to do common denominator, right? So the steps involved here could be summarized as you could simplify fractions first. Right? And the second will be multiply numerators by numerator and multiply denominator by denominator. Clear? Now first step may not be required many times. Now let's look into this. Now here 3 over 8, 3 over 4, we cannot really simplify it. So here straight away we just multiply. So when we say multiply numerator by numerator means 3 by 3. So we get 9 and then 8 by 4 which is 32. So 9 over 32 is our answer. Is that clear? Now in the second one, we have to simplify. How can you simplify? Well, 4 goes one time by 4 and 8 goes 2 times. So that is the way we can simplify. You could actually divide with common factors to simplify, right? Once you have done the simplification, now you multiply numerator by numerator. 1 times 3 is 3. 5 times 2 is 10. You get your answer. Is that clear? So these are the steps involved. Now I'd like you to try this step in the third example, right? Here, we could simplify 5 goes 1 times and 5 goes 3 times. As far as these numbers are concerned, we could cancel by 2. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6. So this is a very critical step. So take a moment to understand how we simplify. We actually multiplied numerator by a number, rather divided, and we also divided the denominator by the same number. Dividing by 2, we get 2 from 4, and from 6 we get 3. Dividing by 5, we got 1 from 5 and 3 from 15. So that leaves 1 and 2 in the numerator, 3 and 3 in the denominator. Now multiply numerators together, we get 2, and denominators together, we get 9. So 2 over 9 is our answer. Is that clear? Now we'll use these concepts of multiplication and solve some word problems. Now these could be slightly difficult. Question number 8 here is, Kate ran 7/10 of 15 kilometer. Now very critical statement. We are saying 7/10 of 15 kilometer, right? Now second one is, Sophia ran 5/6 of the same 15 kilometers, right? That is what is given to us. And that's a marathon race. Who ran farther and by how many kilometers? So first we have to figure out what is 7/10 of 15. Now the key word here is of. Of basically means multiply. So when you get this kind of a statement, you can think like this: 7/10 times 15. And in this case, 5/6 times 15. Does it make sense to you? So we can find out the number by multiplying. Now, 15 is a fraction. 15 could be written as 5/1, right? 15 could be written, no need to write, but I'm just trying to show you. It could be written like this, right? Now, first step to multiply is to simplify. We can divide both of them by 5. 5 times 3 and 5 times 2. And now, 7 times 3 is 21 and 2 times 1 is 2. So that is what we get here. In this case, can we simplify? Yes, we can. We can divide both of them by 3. So we get 3 times 2, 6, and 3 times 5 as 15. So when we multiply, 5 times 5 is 25, and we get 2 here. So we get these two numbers. So clearly, we can now compare. Which is greater? Who ran further? Well, we definitely see that the Sophia ran farther, right? This is Sophia, and here we have Kate. Now 25 is greater, so Sophia ran farther. So that is first thing. Who ran farther? Sophia. 25/2. This is 21/2, right? Now by how much? So that is the second part. We have to find the difference. By how much? So when we say by how much, we have to find take away. So now what we are going to do here is we'll do 21, rather bigger number is 25. We'll write this first, and then from here we'll take away 21/2. Fortunately, we have the same denominators, right? So that is the common denominator. So we get 25 minus 21, which is basically equal to 4/2, or is equal to 2. So what we notice here is that in a marathon of 15 kilometers, Sophia ran 2 kilometers farther. So we can write answer in words, and that is Sophia ran farther. By how many? By 2 kilometers. Does it make sense? Including units in a word problem is very important. So let me summarize. Both Sophia and Kate ran a marathon 15 kilometers. Kate could complete 7/10 of the marathon. Sophia could do 5/6, right, of the whole marathon. So of means multiply. So we will multiply 7/10 times 15 and 5/6 times 15 to get the numbers. We got 21/2 for Kate, 25/2. Now, since we have the same denominator of 2, we can straight away compare. 25 is greater than 21. So Sophia ran further. By how much? You have to find the difference, right? So here we find difference. 25 minus 2 is 4, and 4/2 is 2. So we got our answer as 2 kilometers. Does it make sense to you? So that is how we are going to do it. Now, alternate method could be that you could first do difference between 7/10 and 5/6. But since we have to find how much they ran or how farther she ran, it is better to find the values. Perfect. So I hope that makes sense. Now let's move on and take the next question, which is extremely important. But I hope this concept is absolutely clear, right? Question number 9. Kunal says that 2/3 of his stamps collection is Asian stamps. 1/5 of the Asian stamp collections are from India. what fraction of the total collection is from India. Now, let's try to visualize this particular question, right? So what we have here is basically, let's think about it like this. This is the total collection, right? So when we say 2/3, so I can divide this into 3 parts. Okay, so let's say, so these are our 3 parts, okay. So what we are saying here is that 2/3 of the collection of the stamps is Asian stamps, right? So let's cover 2/3 as Asian stamps. So this is 1/3, right? And that is the other. So we got this done. So that is 2/3 is Asian, right? So this is all Asian. Right. Now, out of all this, 1/5 out of all this is from India, right? So from this, we have to divide this into 5 equal parts, right? Say, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So we divide this into 5 equal parts, right? These are my 5 equal parts. So out of this, 1/5 is from India. Do you understand? So that is 1/5 from India. So that is how we see or visualize the solution. Is that clear? So how are we going to write the answer? So we start with 1 whole and we multiply by 2/3 because it is off. 2/3. And then we multiply by 1/5 off. Do you see 1/5 off? Like this. So when you multiply, 1 is kind of 1 over 1. We get 2 on the top and 5 times 3, 15 in the denominator. So that is what you get. So that is the collection from Indian stamps. Is that clear to you? So that's simple as that. So it is a question of figuring it out. Perfect. So of the whole, 2/3 is Asian, and out of the Asian collection, 1/5 is from India. Is it clear? 1/5 of means multiply, right? 1/5 of it from India. Does make sense? So that is how we are going to solve this particular question, right? Now here is a question for you. Let's say question number 9b. If total collection is of 300 stamps, then A, how many of Asia, and part B is how many of India. So these are 2 questions for you to answer. If total collection, right, is 300. Earlier we were working in fractions. To get the numbers, we need to know what is the value of 1 whole. Now here 1 whole total collection is 300 stamps. Then how many will be of Asia and how many of India? That is what you need to figure out. Perfect. So we're almost at the end. Now let's take up the last question. Question number 10. So the question is simplify and write the answer in lowest terms. So we need to add 2 over 3 with 1, 3 over 4, and then take away 5 over 6. So I'd like you to pause the video, answer this question, and then look into my suggestions. So first, let us write down all these fractions in the fraction form, right? Maybe proper or improper. So we get 2 over 3 here, 1 3 over 4. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So we get 7 over 4, and then we have to take away 5 over 6. Now we have different denominators. So we need to find the lowest common denominator. We have 3 numbers here, 3, 4, and 6, right? Can we simplify? Yes, we can divide them by 3. So if I do that, 3 times 1, 4 cannot be divided, just leave it like that. And we get 3 times 2 as 6. Now 4 and 2 can further be simplified. they have a common factor of 2. So we'll again divide them by 2. 1 cannot be divided, write it as such. 4 goes 2 times and 2 goes 1 times. So the lowest common denominator will be how much? Will be 3 times 2 times 2, which is 4 times 3 is 12. So we need to write all these fractions with common denominator of 12, right? So we could write a straight line here and a common denominator. This is the most efficient way of doing it. How do I get 12? Now to get 12 from the first fraction, I have to times it with 4. For the second, I have to times by 3. For the third, I have to times by 2. So we are going to go multiply this by 4. We get 8. Add 7 times 3, which is 21, and then take away 5 times 2, which is 10. So now let us add these two. So we get 29 minus 10 over 12. Now 29 minus 10 is 9. So that is 1, and then 2 minus 1 is 1. So we get 19 over 12 as our answer. Now, but 19 over 12 we realize is an improper fraction. So it's a good idea to divide 19 by 12. To divide 19 by 12. So when you divide 19 by 12, what do you get? 12 goes 1 time and the remainder is 7. So we could write this as 1 whole, 7 is the remainder with 12 as denominator. Do you see that? So in the last question, we actually understood how to find the lowest common denominator, how to convert improper fractions, how to convert mixed numbers to improper fractions, and also writing the answer in the proper way with mixed numbers. I hope this exercise helps you to understand all the concepts about fractions which you wanted to know. We started with simple questions by comparing fractions, then we understood how to add fractions, subtract fractions, multiply. In between, we took related word problems and they helped us to understand the concepts better. So finally, we are winding up with a simple question where again we learned how to find the lowest common denominator in the most efficient way and how to add and subtract fractions with a common denominator. I hope that really helps. Feel free to write your comments, share your views, and if you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. It has been a long video, so you may have taken few breaks, that's all right. Write your comments, share with your friends, and if you like and subscribe to my videos, that'd be great. Thanks for watching and all the best.